Good day. We will be discussing the ethical and legal implications of information systems. Since we are now living in the IT era, information systems have become essential and plays a vital role in the different aspects of our lives and in our society. However, despite its undeniable benefits, information systems also raise significant ethical and legal considerations. But before we delve into our subtopics, let's briefly define what ethical and legal implications mean. Ethical implications refer to the moral considerations that arises from certain situations or based on our actions, decisions, or practices, particularly concerning what is right or wrong, just or unjust. Whereas legal implications pertains to the obligations, requirements, and potential consequences dictated by laws and regulations. By understanding both concepts, we can now easily grasp potential ethical dilemmas and legal obligations that arise in the use of information systems. Now let me introduce the 6 subtopics that we will be delving in today's discussion. First is personally identifiable information, non-obvious relationship awareness, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and General Data Protection Act. These topics will be discussed by each of our members.
Good morning, everyone. In continuation of Chapter 7, and as the first reporter from our group, I'll be discussing on the first 2 topics. Is relationship awareness. These 2 topics highlight the delicate balance between privacy, data protection, and the responsible use of information. First, we'll explore personally identifiable information and its ethical and legal implications. So, personally identifiable information refers to any information that can be used to identify, contact, or locate an individual either alone or in combination with other information. When it comes to PII, we're talking about sensitive data that include things like names, contact information, identification numbers, your financial details, biometric data, medical information, and even employment history. These pieces of information, when in the wrong hands, can lead to unauthorized access, identity theft, and other harmful consequences. Now let's delve into ethical implication of handling personally identifiable information. First and foremost, privacy is a fundamental ethical considerations. Individuals have a reasonable expectations that their personally identifiable information will be handled securely and confidentially. Organizations must respect this expectation and take appropriate measures to protect personally identifiable information from authorized access or disclosure. Breaches of privacy can have severe consequences such as identity theft or other harmful consequences or outcomes. Next, obtaining informed consent and being transparent about data collection and usage are also critical ethical considerations. Organizations should communicate the purpose, scope, and potential risk associated with collecting and storing personally identifiable information. Transparent policies and procedures should be in place, allowing individuals to make informed decisions about sharing their personal information. Data security is another crucial ethical imperative. Organizations have responsibility to invest in secure systems, encryption, access controls, and regular security audits to minimize the risk of data breaches or unauthorized access. It's not enough to implement security measures once and forget about them. Ethical responsibility includes continuously monitoring and improving security practices to adapt to evolving threats. Next, we have data minimization and purpose limitations. These are ethical imperatives as well. Collecting only the necessary personally identifiable information for legitimate purposes and using it solely for those purposes is essential. Organizations should avoid collecting excessive or unnecessary personally identifiable information and establish retention periods, deleting or anonymizing personally identifiable information when it's no longer needed. Maintaining accuracy and accountability is another ethical obligation. Organizations should ensure the accuracy and integrity of the personally identifiable information they handle. This means maintaining up-to-date records, allowing individuals to review and correct their personally identifiable information and addressing it in inaccuracies promptly. Additionally, organizations should be accountable for their handling of personally identifiable information and have process in place to handle compliance breaches or other incidents responsibly. Next, we have third party sharing and consent. When sharing personally identifiable information with the third parties, organization must exercise caution and ensure proper consent. It's important to evaluate this ethics of such sharing and have clear agreements in a place of safeguard the privacy and security of the shared information. Finally, in the event of data breach or unauthorized disclosure of personally identifiable information, organizations have an ethical responsibility to promptly notify affected individuals, mitigate potential harms, and take steps to prevent future breaches. Open and transparent communication during such incidents is crucial for maintaining trust and accountability. Moving on to the legal implications surrounding personally identifiable information, there are various laws and regulations have been established to govern the collection, processing, storage, and disclosure of personally identifiable information. So let's explore some key legal considerations. So first, data protection and privacy laws. This it plays a vital role in safeguarding personally identifiable information. These laws outline specific requirements for obtaining consent, providing notice, implementing security measures, and allowing individuals to exercise their rights over their personal information. Example including the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union, the California Consumer Privacy Act, and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in the United States. Next, we have security and data breach notification laws. These are in the place to ensure that organizations implement appropriate security measures to protect personal identification. The unfortunate event of a data breach or unauthorized disclosure, organizations have legal obligations to notify affected individuals, regulators, or other relevant parties within specified timeframes. Non-compliance with these laws may result in penalties and legal consequences. Next, certain industries such as healthcare or financial services have industry-specific regulations governing the protection of personally identifiable information. These regulations impose additional obligations and standards to ensure the privacy and security of individuals' personal information within these sectors. Organizations operating in these industries must be well versed in these regulations to meet specific requirements and maintain compliance. Next, we have cross-border data transfer. Introduce additional legal considerations. So, organizations transferring personal information across international borders must be aware of the legal obligations and restrictions in different jurisdictions. Some countries have laws that requires organizations to ensure an adequate level of protection when transferring personally identifiable information to countries with differing data protection standards. And lastly, legal framework often grant individuals certain rights over the personally identifiable information, empowering them to access, rectify, delete, or restrict the processing of their data. Organizations must have mechanism in a place to facilitate the exercise of these rights and respond to individuals' requests within legally prescribed timeframes. Respecting individuals' rights over their personal information is essential for legal compliance and ethical handling for personally identifiable information. So it is essential for organizations and individuals to understand and comply with these ethical and legal implications. By doing so, we protect privacy, build trust, mitigate legal risks, and ensure the responsible handling of sensitive personal information. Remember, being informed about the ethical and legal dimensions of handling personally identifiable information is crucial in today's data-driven world. Ethical decisions, respect for the lawful and responsible handling of personal information. I'll be discussing non-obvious relationship awareness, or also known as NORA. NORA is a fascinating data mining and analytics technology developed by the Central Intelligence Agency in the United States. Its main purpose is to identify non-obvious connections and relationships among seemingly unrelated pieces of information to assist in intelligence analysis and investigations. Imagine if being able to uncover hidden relationships, patterns, and associations that may not be readily apparent to human analysts. That's precisely what NORA does by utilizing advanced algorithms and techniques to analyze vast amounts of data from various sources such as public records, social media, financial transactions, and communication intercepts. The technology behind NORA involves applying machine learning, data fusion, and network analysis methodologies to paint a comprehensive picture of interconnected entities, events, and activities. Relationships between individuals, organizations, locations, and other entities, even when those connections are not explicitly stated or obvious. NORA's capabilities find extensive use in the fields of intelligence and law enforcement. It assists analysts in identifying potential links between individuals involved in suspicious activities, tracking illicit networks, detecting money laundering schemes, and identifying emerging threats. Its impact on investigations and counterintelligence efforts is truly remarkable. However, it is important to note that due to the sensitive nature of NORA and the intelligence community operations, specific details about its implementations and techniques are not publicly disclosed. The exact working and capabilities of NORAs are classified and protected for security reasons. Now, let's turn our attentions to ethical implications associated with NORA. Whenever we discuss the use of such powerful technologies, it is crucial to consider the ethical considerations that arise. Let's explore some of the key ethical considerations associated with NORA. Firstly, privacy and surveillance. Significant concerns. NORA analyzes diverse data sources, including personal information obtained from public records, social media, and communication intercepts. This raises valid concerns about privacy and surveillance. It is essential to ensure that individuals' privacy rights are respected and their information is handled in a manner that aligns with legal and ethical standards. Secondly, we must address data accuracy and potential biases. Algorithms and data models employed by NORA may not always be completely accurate or free from biases. Inaccurate or biased data inputs can lead to erroneous conclusions or unfairly target individuals or groups. Organizations must take steps to ensure data accuracy, regularly assess algorithmic biases, and mitigate any potential discriminatory effects. Since we have transparency and informed consent are also critical ethical considerations. Individuals whose data is used in NORA analysis should be properly informed and give their consent. It is essential for organizations to clearly communicate the purpose, scope, and potential consequences of NORA analysis, allowing individuals to make informed decisions about the use of their data. Security and data protection are paramount when dealing with NORA. The technology relies on extensive data collection analysis, which introduces security risk. Organizations must implement robust security measures, encryption protocols, access controls, and data protection practices to safeguard integrity and confidentiality of the data involved in NORA analysis. Accountability and oversight are crucial aspects of ethical NORA usage. Clear lines of responsibility and accountability must be established to ensure that NORA is employed ethically and in compliance with the legal and regulatory frameworks. Oversight mechanisms such as independent audits and review boards can help ensure responsible and ethical use of NORA and guard against potential abuses. The impact of NORA on civil liberties is another key ethical consideration. Striking the right balance between security and privacy rights is essential to ensure that the application of NORA does not infringe upon fundamental rights or disproportionately target specific individuals or groups. And lastly, transparency and public trust. Vital for responsible NORA usage. Organizations using NORA should be open about its capabilities, limitations, and use cases. Promoting transparency foster public trust and allow for informed public debate on the ethical implications of NORA. In addition to the ethical considerations, there are legal implications that organizations must consider when using NORA. First, we have data protection and privacy laws, such as the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union or the California Consumer Privacy Act may apply to the NORA activities. Organizations must comply with these regulations, which include obtaining proper consent, providing individuals with the data access, implementing appropriate security measures. Next, we have non-discriminating discrimination laws must also be upheld in the use of NORA's techniques. Organizations should avoid using NORA to discriminate against individuals based on sensitive attributes such as race, gender, or religion. When NORA involves the transfer of personal data across international borders, organizations must comply with legal requirements for cross-border data transfer. This may include implementing appropriate safeguards and ensuring an adequate level of data protection in the receiving jurisdiction. Organization using NORA must have legal basis for conducting its analysis and ensure that it's limited to specific and legitimate purposes. Data that are necessary and relevant to the intended purpose of NORA analysis is utmost importance. Finally, organization must have protocols in place to handle data breaches or incidents involving NORA-related data. This includes notifying affected individuals and relevant authorities, mitigating potential harm, and taking steps to prevent future breaches. So understanding and addressing the ethical and legal implications of NORA is crucial to ensure responsible data practices, protecting individuals' privacy rights, and maintain compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Organizations engaged in NORA should implement robust safeguards, transparency measures, and ethical guidelines to foster trust, fairness, and accountability in their use of non-obvious relationship analysis techniques. Releasing, and the next episode will be continue to explore the ethical and legal implication information systems.
Next is Children's Online Privacy Protection Act or COPA. Children's Online Privacy Protection Act is a United States federal law that addresses the privacy and data protection of children under the age of 13. Enacted in 1998 and enforced by the Federal Trade Commission or FTC. COPA sets guidelines and requirements for online services or websites that collect personal information from children. It aims to give parents control over the data collected from their children and imposes certain obligations on website operators, including obtaining parental consent, providing clear privacy notices, and implementing data security measures. COPA aims to protect the privacy and safety of children in the online environment by requiring specific safeguards for their personal information. So, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, the 21st century, also known as the digital age here in the Philippines, is the starting generation from traditional industry to an economy based on information and communication technologies. Cell phone has become a necessity, even in the children. They are not an exemption. That is why US citizens found out that at a young age, children were so much exposed to wider view of life, which needs to be addressed. The US Federal created a law named COPA or Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, the strictest law that reached globally, which helps our children maintain social online to protect their personal information and also gives parents control over what information the websites can collect from the children, which indeed is so much helpful, useful, and it safeguards the children well-being. Ethical implications of COPA. In compliance with COPA, the ethical implications of the organization was made in good faith, provides protection for children from cyberbullying, provides greater parental guidance, and highlighted the privacy online. The following are the ethical implications of COPA. First, child privacy protection. The primary ethical consideration of COPA is the operation of children's privacy online. The foremost objective of COPA is the widespread of protection of children's privacy online. Second is informed consent and parental control. COPA requires obtaining verifiable parental consent before collecting personal information from children under 13 years old. A requirement that confirms the parents to agree and grant websites before collecting personal information from children under 13 years old. Third is age verification challenges. Determining the age of users online can be challenging, leading to potential ethical issues. A very important indication that needs to be given attention to impose this law to avoid ethical issues of COPA. Next is impact on innovation and education. COPA compliance requirements can affect the development of innovative online services and educational platforms for children. In this indication, surely has an effect to other innovations online and educational platforms to children, for it has rules to be followed and to stress it out. COPA is the strictest privacy law created for online protection. Fifth is disproportionate impact on small businesses. COPA compliance can be challenging for small businesses and startups due to the cost and complexities involved. COPA is an expensive law created, thus compliance of this law is very challenging, most especially to small businesses, and to those just starting, for it is very costly. Sixth is effectiveness and enforcement. Ensuring the effectiveness and enforcement of COPA is crucial from an ethical standpoint. In an ethical perspective, specifically in COPA, effectiveness and enforcement is critical, for it is focusing on the privacy online of our children. Wider range means effectivity is at stake. So, next is last, 7, global compliance and harmonization. COPA is a US law, but its reach extends to foreign operators that collect information from children residing in the United States. It can't be denied that COPA is a US law. Since US is a big country, it reaches and extends its purpose to other foreign operators that gathers information from children residing in US. It became a requirement and oneness of the society. It also spread across all nations. Legal implications of COPA. In every law created, there are indications that anchors to the existing laws itself, most specifically in an ICT world. First, obtaining parental consent. COPA requires operators of websites or online services directed at children or with knowledge that they are collecting personal information from children. COPA sees to it that parental consent plays a vital role, an important requirement an operator requires in any websites or online services that they are gathering personal information from children. Second is privacy notice and disclosure. Operators must provide a clear and understandable privacy notice that explains the types of personal information collected from children. Notice and disclosure is an agreement that serves clearly the privacy assurance and understandable notice that all information gathered must be private and well kept by the operators. Third is limited collection of personal information. COPA imposes restrictions on the collection of personal information from children. Basic information must only be gathered from the children, so that other personal information must be kept private within themselves. Fourth is the data security. Operators are required to establish and maintain in reasonable security measures to protect the personal information collected from children. In every law, its topmost priority to secure the data being collected by the operators to fully protect the personal information of the children. Fifth is parental access and control. COPA grants parents the right to review, request changes, or delete the personal information collected from their children. This part of the legal implication of COPA shows connection and implies the parent's power of authority and consent that all personal information of their children being given can be reviewed, deleted, or changed before the website collects its or their information. Sixth is third-party services. COPA holds operators responsible for the collection and use of personal information by third-party services and integrated into their websites or online services. For more secure, safer, and responsible collection and use of personal information, third party is of great help to operators into their websites or online services. Last is the record keeping. Operators are obligated to maintain proper records of their COPA compliance efforts, including privacy policies, parental consent, and any other relevant documentation. In every legal actions, all records must be intact. That is why operators were obliged to maintain proper recording of their COPA compliance efforts relevant to all personal documents. They are collected so that for future use, they can use it as a supporting documents in any case or untoward events may occur.
Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act is a United States federal law enacted in 1974 that protects the privacy and confidentiality of student education records. FERPA applies to educational institutions that receive federal funding, such as schools, colleges, and universities. The law grants certain rights to eligible students and their parents regarding access to and control over their educational records. It also establishes guidelines for the disclosure and protection of these records. FERPA ensures that students' educational information remains confidential and allows them to have a say in how their records are shared and used. The following are the ethical implications of FERPA. First, student privacy. FERPA's primary ethical consideration is the protection of student privacy. FERPA grants students and their parents the right to control the disclosure of educational records. It aims to protect sensitive information such as grades, disciplinary records, and personal identifiers. However, FERPA also allows educational institutions to collect and maintain vast amount of students' data to administrative and educational purposes. The ethical concern lies in striking a balance between protecting privacy, the potential risk of data collection, storage, and use. Second is informed consent. FERPA requires consent from parents or eligible students for the disclosure of education records, except in certain limited exemptions. FERPA requires educational institutions to obtain written consent from parents or eligible students before disclosing educational records to third parties. However,
The language and complexity of consent forms can make it challenging for individuals to fully understand the implications of sharing their information. Ensuring informed consent becomes an ethical imperative, as individuals should have a clear understanding of how their data will be used and with whom it will be shared. Third, data accuracy and integrity. Ethical considerations include ensuring the accuracy and integrity of education records. FERPA mandates that educational institutions implement reasonable security measures to protect student records. However, data breaches and security incidents remain a significant concern in the digital age. If educational records are compromised, it can have serious consequences for students' privacy, identity, theft, or unauthorized access to sensitive information. Ethically, institutions have an obligation to implement robust security measures to safeguard student data. Data security. FERPA obligates educational institutions to implement reasonable measures to protect education records from unauthorized access, disclosure, or misuse. Next is transparency and notice. Ethical implementation of FERPA requires educational institutions to provide clear and transparent notice to parents and eligible students about their rights and the institution's data practices. FERPA requires educational institutions to provide clear notice to parents and students about their rights under the law. However, the complexity of FERPA regulations and the variation in implementation across institutions can lead to inconsistent levels of transparency. Data sharing and third parties. FERPA allows for the disclosure of education records to certain parties, such as school officials with legitimate educational interest. Next is data retention and disposal. Ethical considerations encompass appropriate data retention and disposal practices. Lastly, consent for research and analytics. Educational institutions may use student data for research or analytical purposes, but this must be done ethically and compliance with FERPA. So in all, FERPA aims to protect the privacy and rights of students and their families. It raises ethical implications regarding data collection, informed consent, data security, access to records, transparency, accountability, educational research, and technological advancements. Striking the right balance between privacy protection and educational innovation becomes a crucial ethical challenge in the context of FERPA. Legal implications of FERPA. First is student education records. FERPA defines student education records as any records, files, documents, or other materials that contain information. It requires educational institutions that receive federal funding to provide access to these records upon request. Second is the consent and access. FERPA grants eligible students, those 18 years or older or attending a post-secondary institution, and their parents the right to access and review the student's education records. FERPA generally prohibits the disclosure of personally identifiable information from educational records without prior written consent from parents or eligible students. There are exemptions to this rule, such as disclosures to school officials with legitimate educational interest, disclosures in response to or court orders, and disclosures to other educational institutions where the student is seeking enrollment. Third is directory information. FERPA allows educational institutions to designate certain student information as directory information that can be disclosed without consent unless students opt to restrict its release. FERPA allows educational institutions to designate certain information as directory information, such as student name, address, telephone number, date of birth, and participation of activities. However, parents and eligible students have the right to opt out of the disclosure of directory information. Educational institutions must notify parents and eligible students of the directory information policies. Parental rights and rights transfer. FERPA grants parents the right to access and control their child's education records until the student reaches 18 years of age or attends a post-secondary institution. Data security and confidentiality. FERPA mandates that educational institutions implement appropriate security measures to protect the confidentiality of student education records. Record keeping and disclosure policies. Educational institutions must maintain detailed record keeping policies to document compliance with FERPA requirements. Enforcement and penalties. FERPA is enforced by the U.S. Department of Education. Educational institutions that receive federal funding and fail to comply with FERPA can face penalties, including the loss of federal funding. Additionally, individuals who believe their rights under FERPA have been violated can file complaints with the Family Policy Compliance Office or FPCO within the U.S. Department of Education. The FPCO investigates complaints and facilitates resolution.
Next, we have Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It is a federal law enacted in the United States in 1996 to protect the privacy and security of individuals' health information. HIPAA includes provisions that regulate the use and disclosure of protected health information, or PHI, by healthcare providers, health plans, and other entities involved in healthcare. HIPAA is important in information systems as it establishes standards and safeguards to protect health information, ensuring its confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It promotes secure information systems, enhances privacy protection, and enables seamless electronics exchange and processing of data information. Ethical implications of Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Privacy and confidentiality. The primary ethical consideration of HIPAA is the protection of individuals' privacy and the confidentiality of their health information. Health information contains highly personal and sensitive details about an individual's medical history. If disclosed without consent or is inappropriately accessed, it can potentially harm the individual. So it is necessary to keep health records confidential as part of the ethical obligations of health professionals and its organization. Informed consent. HIPAA emphasizes the importance of informed consent for the use and disclosure of protected health information. HIPAA grants the individuals the right to make decisions about the disclosure of their health information. Information systems or the organization should obtain clear and informed consent from the individual before sharing their PHI. Data security. HIPAA's security rule mandates safeguards for electronic protected health information. Ethical obligations require information systems to prioritize data security and implement measures to prevent data breaches. PHI is highly sensitive and can be exploited if not adequately protected. Safeguarding information systems from cyber threats, implementing encryption, access controls, and regular security audits are crucial ethical responsibilities to minimize the risk of unauthorized access or breaches. Non-discrimination and fairness. HIPAA prohibits the use of protected health information for discriminatory purposes. Ethical concerns arise when health information is used to discriminate against individuals based on factors such as their health conditions, genetic information, or other protected characteristics. Information systems must adhere to ethical principles of non-discrimination and ensure fair treatment of individuals based on their health information. Secondary use of data. Ethical considerations arise when health information systems use protected health information for purposes beyond direct patient care, such as research or analytics. Secondary use of data must be conducted ethically, ensuring that data is anonymized and aggregated to protect individuals' identities. Information systems should also follow ethical guidelines and obtain appropriate consent for secondary data uses. Cultural sensitivity and health disparities. Ethical considerations include cultural sensitivity and addressing health disparities in information systems. Ensuring that information systems respect diverse cultural backgrounds, language preferences, and unique healthcare needs is crucial. Ethical information systems should aim to bridge the gap in access to healthcare services and promote equitable healthcare outcomes. In summary, the ethical implications of Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in information systems include privacy, informed consent, data security, transparency, non-discrimination, secondary data use, patient access and empowerment, cultural sensitivity, and addressing the health disparities. Upholding ethical principles in the design, implementation, and operation of health information systems help protect patient privacy, promotes patient autonomy, and fosters trust between patients and healthcare organizations. Legal implications of Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Privacy Rule. HIPAA's privacy rule establishes national standards for the protection of individuals' protected health information. HIPAA's privacy rules set regulations for the use and disclosure of protected health information. Covered entities such as healthcare providers, health plans, and healthcare clearinghouses must adhere to these standards. Information systems used by covered entities must comply with HIPAA's requirements to ensure the privacy and security of protected health information. Security Rule. HIPAA's security rule provides standards for protecting electronic protected health information. It outlines requirements for administrative, physical, and technical safeguards to ensure the security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic protected health information. Information systems must implement appropriate security measures such as access controls, encryption, and audit controls to meet HIPAA's security requirements. Breach Notification Rule. HIPAA's Breach Notification Rule requires covered entities to notify affected individuals. Information systems must have incident response plans in place to detect and respond to breaches promptly and comply with HIPAA's breach and notification requirements. Business Associate Agreements. HIPAA allows covered entities to engage business associates who handle protected health information on their behalf, such as IP vendors or third-party service providers. Covered entities must enter into written agreements known as Business Associate Agreements. This outlines the responsibilities and requirements to ensure the compliance of HIPAA when protected health information is shared with or accessed by business associates. Enforcement and penalties. HIPAA grants the Office for Civil Rights, OCR, within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services the authority to enforce compliance within its provisions. Non-compliance with HIPAA can result in significant penalties, including monetary fines. Information systems used by covered entities must comply with HIPAA to avoid legal consequences and protect the privacy and security of protected health information. State laws. In addition to federal HIPAA regulations, individual states may have their own privacy and security laws that apply to health information. Information systems operating with specific states must be aware of and comply with any additional state-level requirements to ensure comprehensive compliance. In summary, the legal implications of Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in information systems include compliance with protected health information standards, adherence to HIPAA's privacy and security rules, breach notification requirements, business associate agreements, enforcement and penalties, and potential state-specific laws. Information systems used by covered entities must align with these legal requirements to protect PHI and avoid legal consequences associated with non-compliance. General Data Protection Regulation. It is a comprehensive data protection and privacy regulation implemented by the European Union in 2018. The GDPR establishes a unified set of rules and standards for the processing and protection of personal data within the European Union member state. and also applies to organizations outside the European Union that process the data of the residents. The GDPR aims to strengthen data protection rights, provide individuals with more control over their personal data, and establish consistent rules for data protection across European Union member states. It sets out various requirements for organizations, including obtaining consent for data processing, ensuring data security, appointing data protection officers or DPOs in certain cases, conducting data protection impact assessments, and notifying authorities and affected individuals in case of data breaches. The GDPR also grants individuals several rights, such as the right to access their data, rectify inaccuracies, and request erasure of their data. Non-compliance with the GDPR can result in significant fines and penalties. Ethical implications of general data protection and regulation. Privacy and individual rights. The primary ethical consideration of GDPR is the protection of individuals' privacy rights. Ethically, organizations are obligated to obtain explicit consent for processing personal data, ensuring individuals have clear knowledge of how their data will be used. Data minimization and purpose limitation. The GDPR promotes the ethical principle of data minimization, which involves collecting and retaining only the necessary personal data for legitimate purposes only. Information systems must avoid excessive data collection and ensure that data is used for legitimate and lawful purposes. Accountability and transparency. The GDPR emphasizes accountability and transparency in data processing. Ethical information systems should be transparent about their data processing practices. The GDPR mandates organizations to provide clear and easily understandable privacy policies, informing individuals about the purposes, recipients, and rights related to their personal details. Data security and breach notification. The GDPR imposes the ethical obligation on organizations to implement robust data security measures to protect personal data from unauthorized access, loss, or theft. In the event of a data breach, ethical organizations must promptly notify affected individuals, allowing them to take appropriate actions to protect themselves and their data. Data subject rights. The GDPR grants individuals several rights over their personal data, including the right to access, rectify, erase, and restrict processing. Ethical information systems should empower individuals to exercise these rights, respecting their autonomy and ensuring that their data is accurate and up-to-date. Impact on vulnerable populations. The GDPR recognizes the importance of protecting vulnerable populations, such as children, in the processing of personal data. Ethical considerations include implementing additional safeguards and consent requirements when dealing with personal data of vulnerable individuals, ensuring their rights and well-being are respected. International data transfers. The GDPR regulates the transfer of personal data outside the European Union states to countries without adequate data protection laws. Ethical implications arise when organizations transfer personal data to jurisdictions with weaker privacy protections, highlighting the need for safeguards and assessments to ensure that individuals' rights are upheld. In summary, the General Data Protection Regulation brings ethical implications for information systems, including privacy and consent, data minimization, transparency and accountability, data security and breach notification, data subject rights, impact on vulnerable populations, and international data transfers. Adhering to the ethical principles embedded in the GDPR fosters responsible data practices, protects individuals' privacy rights, and promotes trust between organizations and individuals. The legal implications of general data protection and regulation. Data protection principles. The GDPR sets out specific principles for the lawful processing of personal data. Information systems must comply with these principles, which include processing data fairly and lawfully, collecting data for specified purposes, and ensuring that data is accurate and kept up to date. Lawful basis for processing. The GDPR requires organizations to have a lawful basis for processing personal data. Information systems must ensure that they meet one of the specified lawful bases, such as consent, contractual necessity, legal obligations, vital interest, performance of a task carried out in the public interest, or legitimate interest pursued by the data controller or a third party. Data subject rights. The GDPR grants individuals several rights over their personal data. These rights include the right to access their data, rectify inaccuracies, erase data under certain circumstances, restrict processing, and data portability. Information systems must enable individuals to exercise these rights and respond to requests within the specified timeframes. The GDPR also should impose obligations on organizations to promptly notify supervisory authorities and affected individuals in the event of personal data breach. Data protection impact assessments. In certain circumstances, information systems may be required to conduct data protection impact assessments. DPIA involves assessing the potential risks and impacts of data processing activities on individuals' privacy rights. Organizations must conduct DPIAs when processing operations are likely to result in high risk to individuals' rights and freedom. Appointment of data protection officers. The GDPR requires certain organizations to appoint a data protection officers, or DPO, responsible for overseeing data protection efforts. Information systems within these organizations must ensure compliance with the DPO requirement and establish appropriate communication channels with the DPO. Cross-border data transfers. The GDPR imposes restrictions on the transfer of personal data outside the European Economic Area to countries without any adequate level of data protection. Information systems involved in cross-border data transfers must implement appropriate safeguards, such as standard contractual clauses or binding corporal rules, to ensure lawful and secure transfers. Regulatory enforcement and penalties. The GDPR grants supervisory authorities the power to enforce compliance with its provisions and impose fines for non-compliance. Violations of the GDPR can lead to significant penalties, including fines of up to 4% of an organization's global annual turnover of 20 million European dollars. In summary, the GDPR carries legal implications for information systems, encompassing data protection principles, lawful base for processing, data subject rights, data breach notification, DPIAs, appointment of DPOs, cross-border data transfers, and regulatory enforcement. Organizations must ensure that their information systems align within the GDPR's legal requirements to protect individuals' privacy rights and avoid potential legal consequences. Conclusion: information systems play a significant role in our increasingly digital world, and the ethical and legal implications surrounding them are of utmost importance. Overall, ethical considerations in information systems involve respecting privacy, obtaining informed consent, ensuring data security, promoting transparency, accountability, and empowering individuals with control over their personal data and information. Legal requirements further reinforce these ethical principles, outlining obligations for organizations to protect personal data, facilitate individual rights, and adhere to standards that safeguard privacy and security. That would be all for today's discussion. Thank you.